Broadcasting from Oklahoma, the tornado capital of the world, home of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the University of Oklahoma Sooners. This is the Curated Experience Show, a weekly podcast about the customer experience with viewpoints you will not hear anywhere else. And now your host, author, and customer experience expert, Amos Tanuma.
Welcome to the Curated Experience. I am your host, Amos Tanuma.
It is my favorite part of my week. I've got my partner in crime, Bob Furness. Bob, you still with me?
No, I'm not here anymore. I've wanted to do that for a couple of weeks now. Yes, I'm still here, buddy. Ready to roll.
Awesome. So let's jump right in this morning. I must sort of mention to our listeners, I'm a little behind. We're a little behind on some of your questions, but do know that we will get to them all. But today let's touch on a few. I picked a handful of questions that are all sort of related around metrics. The first and most interesting one that I wanted to talk about related to this topic is the questions around she is undergoing a process of simplifying metrics and scorecards across the contact center organization. Her chief question is she's been asked to reduce all metrics to 5 metrics, only 5, and part of a mandate is also to unify those metrics across all levels. So if I'm understanding what she's saying today, she said some scorecards has as many as 18 metrics, and the metrics differ based on role, etc. So before we even get to what the 5 metrics should be, which is really her question, let me take a slight detour and just ask you, philosophically, what do you think about this idea? Both comment on reduction of the metrics to 5, and comment on what your thoughts are around making them the same across all levels.
So I get the idea that you want to focus, and I think less things to focus on provide more action.
Right.
And so I get that for sure. I think that there are some metrics that supervisors and managers or leaders should be looking at that we should not share with agents. And probably the one that comes to mind most readily is average handle time or average talk time.
Right.
So, the story there is the worst thing you can do is walk over to an agent and say, hey, your talk time's really high. You need to fix that.
I used to do that.
because I when I was an agent, I knew how to fix it. I just accidentally hang up on 5 people today after about a 50-second conversation, and my average handle time went down drastically.
Voila.
So, not that anybody would ever do that in your contact center who's listening, but so I want is my supervisor to focus on why. So I want the supervisor in a coaching session to say, not, hey, your talk time's too high, but let's listen to a couple of calls and see if we can figure out how to improve your call control or your ability to get customers to the point. Or you may find out that this person is fixing other people's problems and solving problems on the front end that the customer didn't know they had. And the talk time being higher is actually a good thing. Right. So again, I think we're probably going to talk about some metrics that probably don't line up to all 3 positions. Right. And I always think about agents, supervisors, and managers, and you could go higher, but the manager, the director, the person that's in charge of the contact center, right? So I'm not sure that they all fit across those 3 categories, but the idea to get focused on what matters is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that is there's sort of a difference, right? And I think you would agree between scorecards and sort of metrics to sort of drive on. So the subtle distinction I'm making is to say that, I've got the scorecard that's something, there's sticks and carrots associated with it, right? If you don't hit X numbers, something happens. Then there are sort of these metrics and things and indicators that there isn't any of those kinds of things, but we just have to go chase it. Like we just have to, if they go bad or good, we look at them from an outlier perspective and go do something about it. Like an example would be credits. I've worked in many organizations that the amount of credits a rep issues doesn't show up ever on any scorecard until someone says, hey, like we're giving away all this money. And then the emphasis shows up, the outliers gets resolved, and then it sort of goes back in. So there's a little bit of that push and pull where you can have some metrics that are just visibility, but are not so much scorecard related.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. So the difference between the scorecard and reporting,
right,
is what you're talking about.
Right. And I've seen some shops that would, even at the agent level, have some display only metrics where they just show it to you, right? They just tell you what this thing is doing, but it has no, no weighting and no bearing. So, okay. So hopefully that part, now let's get to what you were really asking for, which is if you had to pick 5 metrics, and I think this gets tougher. I think you've made this question even more difficult on us because of your decision, your organizational decision to make a uniform across the board. So if we had to pick 5 metrics for her, she is in the, let's call it insurance space, if that helps you. What will those 5 things be?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. This is a tough question, which so let's discuss it. Let's throw one out on the table, and you can agree or disagree. I want my agents. I want everybody in my organization focusing on the customer.
Yes.
So CusSat scores or customer effort scores or customer,
whatever your flavor is.
Yes, whatever your flavor is. Now, if you're gonna throw something out there, you've got to make sure that you're going to explain how it's derived. What is it made up of? And most importantly, you need to explain how I, as an agent, or I, as a supervisor, make a difference in that. So the score is the score. That metric, it's the outliers. It's what makes that up, and how do I make a difference in that? And what brings it up and what brings it down? And how much of it is tied specifically to the agent's conversation so that I can affect it, and how much of it is tied to the greater satisfaction of products and services that I'm getting. So you have to figure all of those things out before you make that the reality.
And what you just said just prompted me to sort of suggest to you that so if you're listening, it's to the extent that you have flexibility in varying the metrics by role. So in other words, do you have the flexibility to say everyone's going to have some sort of customer happiness, satisfaction score, whatever your flavor is, NPS, CES, what have you. But do you have the flexibility to put a different sort of flavor of it on each person's scorecard? So in other words, Bob, you and I know that there are organizations who on the agent scorecard use the question that's specific to the agent, right? The one that says, how did you feel about speaking to Bob today, as opposed to the overall question, which helps you get more buy-in. And so maybe, yes, we all have these same 5 metrics, but my CSAT score, because I'm an agent, is around this question that is mostly in my control. And if you are a director or what have you, you have that higher question that's more, organization or what have you. I don't know if you have that flexibility, but that may be one way you can sort of thread the needle that we were talking about. But if you can't, to Bob's point, just making sure you have clarity with your agent and with everyone, transparency on here's the metrics, here's what you can control, and all of that. Because if you don't, we've seen many CSAT program just lose buy-in from your frontline population because they're sitting there going like, I can't impact this then because the product itself is broken. So just keep those things in mind as you're designing it. So we've got one.
Well, and I just got one more. I just got one more pet peeve to clarify even further what you're out talking about.
Yeah.
Your surveys should be specific about the time or the reason or the agent's name that you talk to. Here's why I say that. So I had a problem the other day at a healthcare company. I talked to 3 different people. I got one survey asking me what did I think about the capability of the agent that I spoke to. The first 2, not so much. The third one who solved my problem, right. Great agent, positive, professional, knowledgeable. So which one do I pick? Do I ding the one that didn't do it with the idea that what if I hit the wrong one? So you know what I did? I just didn't answer.
Right.
So when you're starting to think about surveys for the first time in your organization, think about the things that Amos just talked about. Does the CSAT, does the scoring does the bigger CSAT have a question about the interactions with your contact center?
Right.
Because if I'm getting a 6 out of 10 on my company CSAT, but my contact center is getting a 9 out of 10, then I have some ability to go, okay, well, we're doing our job.
Right.
If it's reversed, I know I'm the problem. But in addition to that concept of, do you understand does the surveyee understand who you're meaning when you talk about that? So just chase the rabbit. I know we got time and we owe her 3 more or 4 more. 4 more. Some form, if I'm an agent and I'm a supervisor, some form of a quality score. Okay. Now, we could have a whole session around whether or not you should score quality every time and what does quality scoring do? But hey, we're a contact center, and most likely you're scoring somebody somewhere, somehow on quality. It may only be 3 calls a month, but that's a potential for a scorecard, I believe. Don't you?
Yeah. The next place I would go would be FCR. I know, because I think about, in conjunction with, if you want to sort of talk about customer effectiveness, right? How is the customer deals? Okay, one, are they happy? But are they happy, and are their issues resolved? However you decide to manage to measure that could be another minefield on its own. But I always like this first contact resolution piece, and there are 30 different ways you and I have studied on how it's measured. But I think it's one that's a good indicator on how well you're doing.
Yeah, now I'll just say this: you're right. There are 30 different ways. But whichever way you're measuring it on this month, if you measure it for a month the way that you think you can measure it in whatever form that is, you still get a benchmark for what the second month looks like.
Right.
So you may find that it's not measuring correctly, or you don't believe it's real, so you change it. But it's not about there isn't a automatic way to measure FCR and first call resolution, by the way, if you're not familiar with that. There isn't a magic way to measure it. It could be via multiple ways, and we could do a half of a show on FCR.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so do we count my quality also?
Yes,
So are
you've
we
got
at three?
three.
Are we at three?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. We've got a couple more.
So what are we going to do about operational, the kinds of things like you talked about with your credits or
Yeah.
refunds, or like, is there an operational
Well,
measurement that I can add to my score that is relevant to my industry and relevant to my contact center?
yeah, I think even before that, I was thinking, well, what do we do about efficiency? We can't pretend like, right, that someone's not paying attention to how much all of these interactions cost.
So which measurement are you gonna nail to the wall on efficiency?
um, I am.
They'll say it. They'll say talk time. They'll say talk time because you sound like a 1977, 1987 call center guy if you say handle time. Go ahead. I know you're going to say it because you and I have had this conversation.
I'm just telling you, unless we want to live on La La Land, at the end of the day, someone is counting how much every contact costs.
Do you want that agent? Do you want that agent to count that?
I don't. but if listen, I didn't make the rules that they wanted a uniform scorecard, right? That happened before I got brought into this. But to the extent that you're going to have one and everyone has some metrics, I do think that you gotta have some efficiency metrics there. This is just my opinion, because one of the flip side, Bob, and you know, Bob, I'm in spirit with you on the no handle time. But
I know you are. You are.
Here's where I part ways a little bit. Imagine being a manager or supervisor, right? And someone is looking at your team's handle time, right? And you're now being asked to drive that handle time down, and the agent has no visibility. I just think the skill level of the supervisor manager needs to be really high to be able to navigate through that conversation, right? So for me, my vote on an efficiency metrics, if you're looking for one that spans throughout the organization, is some variation of AHT. As much as I hate it, and if you're not in the average handle time, across your contacts. Now, I think the way you can smooth this thing over is maybe on the agent scorecard, it's worth, I don't know, 5%, but I cannot think of a better metric if you're going to have one across the board than average handle time. I don't love it, but you got to have it because someone's counting it, and if you lose it completely, my worry would be what happens to your efficiency.
Okay, so there's a part of me that wants to drop back into Saturday Night Live from the 70s and talk to you as Jane, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So for the ones of you who are old as we are and know what I'm talking about, that's what's running through my brain. So I'm going to disagree. I'm going to counterpoint. I'm going to say to you that if you ever, it is not your responsibility of your agent to keep their handle time in check. It is a responsibility of the leadership to give them the tools that they need and the support that they need and the coaching that they need to keep average handle time in check. So I'm not in any way recommending that we ignore handle time.
Right.
I just don't believe it's an agent. So I'm going to tell you
Would you put
that you either add a 6. Well, efficiency is adherence. Efficiency is your butt's in your seat when you're supposed to be in your seat.
That would be the
So-
one you would put in.
So that's the one that I would put in there for efficiency is butts in seats. Are you clocking in and out? Are you going where you're supposed to be? Are you where you're supposed to be? What does adherence look like? Because I think if I give you the right tools, I make sure you're where you're supposed to be, and I provide you
utilization
or something like that.
that.
Utilization, yeah. So what I'm trying to say is to focus on the time is the problem. If somebody is over the median of average handle time, I as a supervisor should be talking with them and saying, let's spend some time and look at your call flows. Let's understand what's happening and not focus on that, because what happens is once you measure it and once you release it, then I, as an agent, I'm going to manage to it. It's Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell, I'll come and get my reward. So I realize that this is a debate. I would say to you that probably 70% of call centers live on your side of the street.
Yeah.
I would say only 25 to 30% live on my side of the street, and my side's harder.
It is. It's a higher bar.
It's a higher bar.
It really is, and I think it requires that you have a leadership team that's frankly been trained.
Well, you can't. You also can't coach on a 1 to 25 person team, right? If you've got a supervisor for every 25 to 30 people, that you're not going to coach to handle time. Handle time matters. I'm not anyway saying that. We've got to manage productively. What my question would be is, what is causing handle time to rise?
Right.
That's an interesting. There's a whole set of questions right now to me around the COVID world, and we sent everybody to work from home. I would love to know what's happening to these metrics in a COVID world. Like, did handle time go up, or did handle time go down?
We
I don't know the answer to that.
A whole conversation around this topic, because I think it's interesting, because it's one of those things where the pragmatic side of me just goes, like what ends up at the end of the day when I think about most supervisors, and I say this from a place of empathy, as you know, and you tell them some metrics is going down, at handle time. What you're asking them to do is go do this level of research, right? And get to the what's really going on, is the rep, and is it okay? And then show up to the side of the rep after doing all of this analysis and diagnosing the problem and say, listen, Joe, here's what's happening. You are spending all this time doing X, Y, and Z, and it's really frustrating the customer. Or it's okay, right? Because you're selling more, what have you. And that's the part that I kind of go, no, I don't see that. I see supervisors running around, you know what I mean, like a chicken with its head cut off, just trying to, like they end up just doing what I did 20-something years ago and just said, here's the report. Hey, Bob, could you bring down and I get it. It produces bad results, but your method is probably, it's the right one. It's just a high bar.
It is a high bar. It is a high bar. I admit. I agree. So I think that's 4.
So yeah. So we're 4. So we've got NPS, just to review. So what we're tackling today is, if you had to pick just 5 metrics, and in this use case, they want it across the board, but what would these 5 metrics be? So far, we've got some sort of CSAT score, NPS, CS, whatever your team uses. We've got some sort of quality. We've got first contact resolution. And then we've got number 4, this sort of adherence utilization. So the idea here is you put an efficiency metric that says, are you at the right place doing the right things at the right time, right? And not worry about, not directly put on here, here's a stopwatch, you need to spend 5 minutes with every customer. So we're at 4. What will be number 5?
So I think you need something that is related to your organization's operation. So is it the something to do with distribution? Is it something to do with in the cellular world, it had to do with churn of customers, like something that fits from a company perspective, that what your focus is. In retail, it might be something about returns or something.
Cross-sell.
Upsell, cross sell. Yeah. So operation. If you're in the insurance business, I'm not sure I know what the answer is, but what is something that's driven by your contact center that affects the customer that's operationally focused? Is it new policies?
Right.
Is
Like
it
I call
upsell of
in-
policies?
Yeah,
is it
you
is it
mentioned.
is it stopping the churn of policies? Like what are those things that you're affecting from an operational perspective?
Okay. Let me run through this list and kind of go through it again, see if we feel good. So we've got the CSAT covered. We've got quality. Got this first contact resolution. We've got adherence / utilization. And we've got an operational metrics, right? Which is, we'll have to count on you to know what that is. What's this sort of company thing that's important to you? Maybe it's upsell, cross sell, those kinds of things. So my question now would be, what are we missing? Like, what is? By the way, this list seems really good to me. I wonder why most teams don't have scorecards this short. But this seems really. What do we think is glaringly missing from this? If you were running a contact center, I'm trying to pick it apart.
So when you asked this question, I immediately started writing down ideas, and the only other idea that I had was something around effort. And I would just, from a time element, say that if you're at all interested in whether you should measure effort, you should read the book Effortless Experience.
Yep.
It's the book I wish I had read, but I'm not sure. I think you could break down some of those metrics into smaller bites. You could have. I don't think we counted. I think when we were counting, we didn't count. What were? Let's see. We didn't count. I can't think of the word. Anyway, I don't. It's a pretty dang good list, man. Is the point?
Listen, I really like it. I really like it. So I think, here's
Adherence.
yeah.
I don't think we counted adherence. So I do.
We lumped it in with util, right? We sort of
Yeah.
we kind of lumped it in, and that's those are the trade-offs you're going to make, right? Like if you're going to limit this thing to 5, you start looking at something like effort, and you start saying, but we already have NPS. Do we think it's a better? And so you'll have to make some of those things. But
I got one you shouldn't count, and that's occupancy.
oh, yeah.
And if your technology gives you an occupancy number and you're holding your agents and supervisors accountable to that, and for it to be high, you're missing the point on occupancy. So we could do a whole show on occupancy, and maybe somebody will ask the question, what is occupancy and why does it matter? But it's one that should not be on a scorecard, in my opinion.
No, I agree, and it's a Goldilocks metric, right? In that you get it too low, right? People are bored. Right?
Yep.
And you get it too high, and you're just killing people. You're just burning everyone out, and people are ready to quit. So you gotta find that sweet spot and just pivot and just keep it around there at sort of that good place. No, I
think maybe one more, depending on the kind of training that you have in your organization. I know at back in the day at Bell South Mobility, we had 40 hours a year that you were expected to do the 40 hours of training.
right.
And I have seen in today's world where we have now online training or availability of online training at any time, sort of ready training,
Right.
then we should measure whether or not our folks are attending those sessions or not.
Yeah.
So that may be one more that's a little bit less about the contact center and more about are your people learning well.
Yeah.
That's the last one I got.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. This was a lively conversation. I can't wait for the feedback when we publish this. The other last tip we will just give you is that at the end of the day, you're having these scorecards and it's a vote on here are the 5 most important things. Doesn't mean that other things don't come up or there aren't sub metrics around this that you won't go chasing. So setting those right expectations with your folks. And then you have another difficult job ahead of you, which you didn't ask us, so we didn't tackle, which is what weighting do you do to these 5 metrics, and maybe we'll cover that another time. But we run out of time today. But Bob, this is awesome. I cannot wait to have this La La Land AHT deal that you've got.
Well, I knew you were going to come back, so my last words were just: if you want to be right, don't show AHT to your agents. If you want to be wrong and do it Moss's way, I'm totally with that. I actually wrote down average handle time on my piece of paper, but I wrote it down under the word supervisor, not under agents. You don't have to tell your agents what their average handle time is. You do not to be successful.
All right, we'll leave it there.
All right, thanks
everyone for listening.
Right.
We will be back next week.
Thanks, man.
And until next time, remember, the experience is either random or intentionally curated. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Curated Experience with Amos Tanuma. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll join the conversation online by visiting us at curatedcx.com or at amostanuma.com. That's curatedcx.com or AMASTENUMAH.com. And please invite your friends and colleagues to visit our website or iTunes where they can check this and previous podcasts. This has been a Bien LLC production. Check us next time for another edition of The Curated Experience.